Once, there was a terrifying demon with the form of a hideous insect who possessed such a good and righteous soul inside, he decided to protect the powerless humans against his own kind. This legendary Dark Knight fought against and defeated even the king of the underworld with a sword bearing his own name, Sparda. In order to save mankind, he completely sealed the portal between the human and the demon world, but had to sacrifice all his powers to achieve this. Powerless, Sparda retired in the human world, falling in love with a woman named Eva. And as a result of their love, twin children were born, Dante and Vergil. But even though his memory faded out from human history, the demon still remembers him as a traitor and bears unfading hatred against him even after his death. Once, there was a statue of a wise and powerful man with beautiful angel wings, who was so evil, so cruel, and hideous on the inside, he decided to take revenge on Sparda's innocent family. He sent an army of demons to kill Eva, making the two twins orphan, wounded, and abandoned. His name is the demon emperor, Mundus, who became the king of the underworld, an evil entity that is so powerful it cannot be killed, only sealed away. To top that off, Mundus is almost like a cosmic being, capable of creation. He not only created a fake copy of Dante's mother in order to mock him and haunt him, but he went further to create weapons of psychological torment to make sure the sons of Sparda will never forget him. These are the bioweapons of Devil May Cry. In this video, I would like to take a deeper look at the design and lore origins of the three major bioweapons of the series, Nightmare, Nelo Angelo, and the Leviathan, and how they are all related to not only Mundus, but they also reflecting Dante and Vergil as well in some way, and continue haunting them even during the events of the latest game, Devil May Cry 5, because I believe that there is more to these creatures than it meets the eye, and upon understanding them, we can gain a much better understanding of the story and its brilliant characters. But what is a bioweapon exactly in the world of Devil May Cry? When it comes to video games, the first thing might come to your mind hearing this word is of course the bioweapons of Resident Evil, the creatures that takes many terrifying form created out of humans or other living beings in order to be used as a controlled weapon by terrorists. And understanding Resident Evil is actually very important, since the first Devil May Cry started out as a game that was originally meant to be the next Resident Evil game, until the point when the developers realized its design is going into a more action game-like direction and decided to make it its own title. However, many of the Resident Evil designs remained in the game, such as the dark and terrifying environment and setting, and the creatures who were originally designed to be bioweapons got redesigned to be a demon. Except for one. A mysterious creature called Nightmare is still being referred to as a bioweapon in the library of the first DMC, as well as the Leviathan from Devil May Cry 3, also being referred to as such. These two creatures are indeed biological and being used as a weapon, but we cannot really say the same to the Angelo armors, which are simply being technological, powered by the spirit of an unwilling victim forced inside. Therefore, even though the Angelo armors are not actually being referred to as a bioweapon in the library, I would argue that they not only look similar, but they were created for the same purpose, and with Vergil's actual body being forced on the inside of one of these armors, I would argue that it deserves to be included and discussed in this video. Because, believe it or not, demons in Devil May Cry seem to possess a far more advanced technology than humans, but powered by demonic energy instead of electricity. Take for example the insides of the Temenin Gru being powered by these flashing red lights everywhere on the walls, being capable of moving the entire structure in an instant. And even though the tower was built by humans, they were the disciples of the demon clan, so perhaps the demons teach them how to build the tower. So this tower is the result of a cooperation between humans and demons. Then we also have a couple of guns made in the underworld, looking like they came out of science fiction. With its alien design, we have the gun from the first Devil May Cry, Nightmare Beta, which is capable of shooting laser beams of demonic energy. And while Nightmare Beta looks like it's made out of darkness, its counterpart, the Gun of Light, could be interpreted to be Artemis, another laser shooting gun made in the underworld by the legendary demon gunsmith called Machiavelli. This gun is shooting arrows concentrated with demonic energy, which looks very similar to the beams you shoot with Nightmare Beta. You can find Artemis in DMC3 and can come across it again in DMC5, as it is being fused together with Lady to serve as its core, creating a large demon that serves Urizen. And similarly to these weapons, both Nightmare and the Leviathan's heart is also being described as some sort of a machine made with demon technology. The visual similarity between these two creatures and the Angelo armors is not only the pulsating, colorful lights on them, but also these straight lines and artificial shapes could be seen on the earliest designs of enemies from the first DMC, from the development stage when the game was meant to be Resident Evil 4, so almost every enemy were meant to be a bioweapon. If you look closer on some of these enemies, you can spot the same red and blue lines on them printed on their bodies. Some of these designs carried over to the transition to Devil May Cry, staying on decorating the face of the lesser demon called the Sargasso, or becoming the tribal tattoos of the nobodies. So let's take a closer look at the bioweapons and demon technology in this video, starting with Nightmare, the most mysterious and perhaps the most powerful entity in the entire series, as it is said to be capable of destroying the entire underworld. Let's start with a quote from one of the official art books where one of Nightmare's designers talks about the origins of this creature. Quote, "This strange-looking enemy has skeletons floating within a slimy body. Its design is inspired by the hit toy Slime. Initially, the only description was that it was a slime-like enemy that would take on a solid form when exposed to light. However, during the production stage, attacks worthy of the Nightmare name were born, such as swallowing Dante and sending him flying into a nightmare space, or firing freezing lasers. Incidentally, the name of Dante's weapon, Nightmare, has a B in it, meaning prototype, and this gigantic enemy Nightmare is its completed form, A. It's possible that the demon emperor Mundus might wear this Nightmare on his arm." End quote. It is such a fun yet terrifying idea to imagine Nightmare being attached to Mundus' arm as he is shooting lasers with it, similarly to how Dante shoots with Nightmare B, but on a larger scale. But how did such a powerful being came to existence? The official Devil May Cry 5 manga, Visions of V, gives us some visual illustrations and a story behind the origins of this creature before V approaches it. We see Mundus himself standing on top of a rock, surrounded by either water or some sort of black substance. He wants to create a weapon out of this substance, and in order to do so, he drops something into it that looks like some sort of a rock or organic material, because it is also dripping liquid from it. The narrator tells us that thing was once created by the demon emperor. Then Mundus talks in quotation marks, "I desire a more powerful demon, a manifestation of ruin, Nightmare, given form." And as he drops the item into the black substance, it comes to life with skeletons all over its liquid body. The narrator continues, "And he succeeded in achieving his goal, excessively so. Its power could lay waste to even the demon world. The demon emperor feared it so much that he bound and restrained that very power he supposedly sought. It was created as a mere weapon that possessed no will of its own. All it would do is obey the master's orders." Dante's first encounter with Nightmare takes place inside the castle of Melee Island. Inside a pitch-dark room, he finds a puddle of water on the floor and he feels some sort of evil coming through the reflection. Mirrors in Devil May Cry seems to be serving as portals between the human world and the demon world, as it is said that evil is the reflection of man. Thus, evil lurks inside the mirror. And as Dante looks into it, Nightmare suddenly jumps out of the reflection and manifesting in the human world in front of our protagonist. Nightmare is a terrifying, formidable boss, which you can only attack by making its core reveal itself. And in order to do so, you need to hit the devices on the wall first in order to create light around you. Meanwhile, Nightmare is launching all sorts of attacks at you. It launches spikes out of its body on the sides and shooting homing missiles and lasers and even chasing you with its slimy parts. Seems like this creature is consisting of two different forms, the black substance with skeletons inside and a white armor with the signature bioweapon marks on it, flashing in colorful lights. But the most terrifying attack that Nightmare is capable of is when it chases down and grabs Dante, surrounding him in the black slime. Upon doing so, the creature transports Dante into a pocket dimension where he needs to defeat the demons in order to be able to escape. Now, here is when things get interesting. This game has the best library out of all the others in the series, as you can open it in the middle of gameplay and you can not only read long, detailed descriptions of the enemies, but it also gives you some pretty useful gameplay tips on how to deal with them. Nightmare is no exception, having a pretty long description that explains how to deal with all the attacks he does, but the beginning tells us something important about the story of both this creature and Dante. Quote, "It's a bioweapon created by the Dark Emperor. Its properties consist of inorganic substances. Like a machine, it obeys the commands of the Dark Emperor. Whether it has a consciousness is unknown. The embossed circles on the floor are tools used to restrain the Nightmare from overriding. Once the Nightmare is restrained, it will encase itself in a hard armor, but it will show its core from time to time, almost as if it's breathing. To damage the Nightmare, it will have to be in this form. When you are surrounded in its gel-like form, you will be teleported into an evil dimension. You must destroy the evil spirits that rule the dimension. The evil is a reflection of Dante's trauma that rests in his subconscious." End quote. This sentence most likely refers to the event when Mundus's demons attacked Dante when he was a child, taking the life of his mother away in front of him, leaving him subconsciously traumatized. This is perhaps the only time in the entire series when something explicitly tells us this information about our main character. However, this trauma also manifests in the form of bosses that Dante defeated before in the game, and they changing depending on which Nightmare fight you are doing. Out of the 3 occasions when you encounter it, these bosses can be Phantom, Griffon or Angelo. Although Dante probably didn't get traumatized by these bosses, the player probably kinda did, as these bosses were pretty difficult, and now this creature is making the player face their previous adversaries in order to reflect on themselves and their capability of defeating them. The threat of having to defeat these difficult bosses yet again inside an already difficult boss can create a little bit of terror and panic for the player. At least it did it for me, making me really fear the slime of Nightmare and wanting to avoid getting grabbed at all costs. Although if you manage to defeat the bosses inside Nightmare's realm, you get a big payoff by also damaging Nightmare back with a pretty good amount. And I also love how breaking free from Nightmare's grab being illustrated in the dark room, pure bright beams of light breaks through the slime as Dante succeeds in defeating the demons born from his trauma. There is also a lesser demon in the game called the Sargasso, referring to the Sargasso Sea, and as its name suggests, it can be encountered under the sea when Dante falls down from the collapsing bridge. However, this creature was not originally intended to be in the game. As one of the designers tells us its story in the art book, quote, this enemy was created for Nightmare's alternate dimension. It wasn't included in the original plan, it was an unplanned enemy created by the staff in between work. It eventually appeared in the Undersea Temple and was given a name and became an official Devil May Cry enemy. End quote. So it seems like this enemy, which is a simple, spirit-like skull, appears in only 2 places in the game, excluding the secret missions. It was made to be an enemy inside Nightmare's dimension, and it also appears in the Undersea Temple. This to me suggests the concept that these 2 places and substances are similar to each other, the underwater and the subconscious realm, where Dante is being transported to. Furthermore, the face paint on the Sargasso really reminds me of the colorful, flashing lights on Nightmare's shell, possibly suggesting a connection and a shared origin between the 2 creatures. It is not too hard to imagine, since you can also see Nightmare's slime body is consisting of many skeletons. So this is Nightmare in the first Devil May Cry. But what is this creature actually? What is this slime made of? The only clue we have are the skeletons, however it is also said to be made out of inorganic substances. The most mysterious part is, however, how did this being become so incredibly strong that even its creator feared it? And how is it being able to make a person face their own subconscious and trauma? Whatever the case is, it seems like that Nightmare is the most unique, enigmatic, and the most powerful being that seems to be a force of nature, or more like a force created within the underworld, being born out of something truly dark that doesn't belong to the human world but doesn't really belong to the demon world either. It is an inorganic slime made into a powerful machine, acting nothing more than a weapon. However, the way it interacts with Dante and V, to me it almost seems like it has some sort of a soul after all.
May not my flesh fail on me.
Even though Nightmare was defeated in the first Devil May Cry, it appears in the latest game as one of Vergil's discarded memories and feelings, manifesting from his subconscious world into the real, material world as Yamato calls them out from him. That is the best way I can explain how can they manifest and come to life. After all, these demons got defeated and killed back in Melee Island. This is interesting to me because it seems like when Vergil was Nelo Angelo, he was not only part of Mundus' demons, but he was also part of the demon group in some sort of a soldier unit way, remembering Griffon, Shadow, Nightmare, and even Phantom as his fellow comrades perhaps. But instead of remembering them in a loving way, all these creatures are part of his nightmarish, tormenting memories when he was Nelo Angelo. So together with his humanity that he considers as weakness, he decides to throw away. This is why it's very important when these 3 demons decides to not go back into Vergil, as they sacrificing themselves and letting themselves disappear instead of going back to continue to haunt Vergil with the nightmares and memories when he was once Nelo Angelo. So it becomes evident that these 3 demons are not the exact same bosses from Melee Island, rather they are some sort of a reincarnation of them through Vergil, being born from his abominable thoughts from the time when he was Nelo Angelo. The Visions of V manga illustrates this idea by making V getting flashbacks of painful memories right after obtaining Griffon, Shadow, and Nightmare. According to those flashbacks, Griffon perhaps represents Vergil's lost ego and mind, while Shadow represents his rage that he felt in his body that got physically imprisoned inside the armor like a chained animal. And Nightmare represents all of his trauma, as he not only suffered trauma when he was a child, scarring him into being terrified of the mere thought of being weak, but also ending up literally living inside a nightmare when Mundus made him into a mind-controlled soldier. To me, it seems like these 3 demons are somewhat of a lesser version of the original bosses, since Griffon is much smaller, while Shadow looks like a real animal instead of consisting of shadow, while Nightmare, interestingly, takes the form of a human shape this time, possibly reflecting his alliance with V, Vergil's human side, so he decides to take the same form as well, since he can be turned into anything. And although it lost all the cool attacks and missiles it could shoot, Nightmare in DMC5 still possesses the devastating blow of the laser beam that it can shoot out from its eye. In Nico's DMC5 library notes, she, as well, considers Nightmare a mysterious being that even the Order of the Sword have no knowledge of. But it seems like to her, the creature doesn't have a consciousness on its own, and its only purpose is destruction. However, it seems like it is still able to swallow and transport someone into their own subconscious and reflect on their trauma. This is being beautifully illustrated in the official DMC5 manga, Visions of V. The manga tells the story of so many crucial moments that we didn't get to see from Vergil and V's perspective, and it also depicts the moment when V went to seek out Nightmare, who got lost after the separation, and he wants to face it and obtain it as his ally, being confident after he managed to get Griffon and Shadow on his side. And the manga does indeed illustrate Nightmare in its original glory before V obtains him. It's the same black slime with the bioweapon armor on top of it with a massive size. To top that off, it even demonstrates attacks it was once capable of doing, such as launching spikes to pierce through Shadow, defeats Griffon with a laser beam, and finally, it swallows V the same way it once did to Dante. Nightmare transports the man into a dimension created from his dark subconscious, making him look into the mirror and face all of his trauma. V encounters images of haunting memories from the time when he was Nelo Angelo. He sees Mundus in front of him, then Angelo grabs him from the water below and squeezes his throat in an attempt to suffocate him until Dante comes to the rescue. V asks the creature, why is it showing these things to him? Is he trying to say he is weak and inferior to Dante? But upon asking that question, beams of light starts shooting out from the darkness, and V manages to get his hands on Nightmare's core, take it out, and awaken back into the real world. He gives the core back to the creature, but it doesn't agree to team up yet so easily. He violently attacks V, but the man doesn't back down and confidently claims ownership over Nightmare. You can recognize your own master, can you not? My Nightmare. It seems like the creature is looking back into him and finally agrees to let go and accept him as his master. And the reason why V having black hair instead of white is because Nightmare residing inside his body, tainting even his hair to the darkest shade. However, the process of facing the subconscious is not over yet. After Nightmare demonstrates his ability to fight back against the demons and protect his master, V suddenly faints and blacks out. Possibly because of the effects of Nightmare being inside of him, he's waking up inside a dream all by himself. This is the most beautiful chapter in the Visions of V manga that is worth reading and seeing. V wakes up inside the dream, but at first he thinks he is in the real world. He's sitting on a couch with music playing. Then he says, "I hate this song, did you change it again, didn't you?" But then he realizes that this is not only a dream, but part of his memories. The place he's sitting in right now turns out to be none other than his childhood home, where he grew up with Dante, and he used to be sitting on this couch trying to read books while his brother would mischievously change the song playing to annoy him. And the evidence for this becomes clear when we see a glimpse of the dead body of their mother, Eva, laying in a pool of blood in front of him. Upon realizing that he is unable to control Nightmare for long, Vergil falls into a moment of despair, laughing on his own weakness and the hopeless state that he is in, and he thinks there is no possible way he can defeat Urizen and avoid certain death. But then he notices the William Blake poem book and begins thinking about it. Why did he grab it and took it with him when he awoken as we? It's just a useless poem book after all. But then he begins to read it and remember that he used to love these poems. He reflects on the sentimentalism of these poems, such as a wishing for having more time and feeling like having an eternity, forgetting the worries of death. It is no wonder that Vergil also threw this memory away when he split his humanity out of himself. Then he also sees the Yamato, and noticing its reflection being the rebellion. Upon touching the mirror, we see Dante in front of him, and upon looking into the mirror, he begins to truly reflect on himself. He thinks deeply about why he lost to Dante, if they having the same face, the same power, and the same blood. This is where the distinction between Vergil's humanity and himself becomes very important, as he starts talking about himself not only in first person, but in third person as well. V says, quote, "So why did I lose? I must have done something wrong, and that mistake is why Vergil lost," end quote. Regardless of whose fault it was, that's not what's important. What's important is that Vergil finally admits that he has done something wrong, and even though he cannot put his finger on it what it is exactly yet, this is a huge step forward in his process of self-reflection and growth. He realizes that it is Dante who knows the answer, and upon doing so, the mirror shatters in front of him, and he wakes up in the real world. He wakes up determined, as he got an idea how to save himself, having no other choice but to go and visit Dante and ask him for help, under the disguise of a stranger, hiring him as a devil hunter for the job, as he is the only one who can defeat Urizen. And that is the story of Nightmare through the events and gameplay of Devil May Cry, a creature that represents what a nightmare truly is, not only physically, but spiritually as well. The next bioweapon of this video is a knight armor that creates a terrifying difference between body and soul, and the mystery of what's inside the armor. These demonic armors could actually contain nothing inside but a trapped soul, but sometimes there could be a family member's body being trapped inside, and Dante have no choice but to fight the armor without knowing this. This is the cruel concept that created the Angelo armors of Devil May Cry. But by the word angelic, you might remember that I also called the outer shell of Mundus as a man with beautiful angel wings, hiding a hideous, evil entity inside. As Mundus likes to think of himself as a god, he wanted angels to serve him, or in other words, soldiers. The DMC5 before the Nightmare novel tells us that it was none other than a demon blacksmith called Machiavelli who also created the first Angelo armor for Mundus. However, the armor in itself could not come to life on its own and required a vessel inside. For this, the demon emperor chose Vergil to put inside of it after he broke his mind and taken control over it. Or perhaps it is the armor itself that is keeping him under mind control and making Vergil serve his ultimate enemy against his will. Now, even though the game never calls the Nelo Angelo armor a bioweapon and it's more like a demon technology, I would argue it works on very similar principles as Nightmare, as both are being controlled to serve Mundus and they both having those colorful lights on their bodies pulsating in a very similar way. Furthermore, when the Black Angel takes off his helmet, those artificial markings, unique to bioweapons, can be seen on Vergil's face, burned into his skin in blue colors. Vergil also have those blue markings on his face, on his alternative outfit in DMC3, but much more pronounced, resembling to the pulsating lights on his Nelo Angelo armor. However, these markings changes on his DMC4 version, being redesigned to resemble blue veins instead. They were originally much thicker in shape in the first game and can be seen clearly visible not only on his forehead, but also coming down as a straight line under the eyes of the mind-controlled Vergil, and there are similar marks can be seen underneath Nero's eyes in his devil trigger form. Could have meant to be a reference to this, except his marks are red. But instead of going further into speculations about this, let's go back to the lights on Nelo's armor. They pulsating in blue and purple colors, and as a nice detail, they turn red and orange when you damage him and take down his HP to low, so the armor can be seen flashing blue in the cutscene before the fight and turning red by the end of it, signaling that the armor is being damaged. These colorful, flashing lights on the dark body can be further observed on the Angelo armors of Devil May Cry 4. The Bianco and their leaders, the Alto Angelos, are like the white version of the Black Angel armor worn by Vergil. But instead of being created by Mundus in the MC4, they were created by humans, thanks to the scientist mastermind of Fortuna City, Agnes, who modeled them based on the found fragments of the Nelo Angelo armor. These armors, however, does not have a body inside. Instead, they trapping the souls of humans and demons in order to function. This applies to the lesser Bianco Angelos with blue lights, but for their commander, the Alto Angelos featuring red pulsating lights, it's a bit different, as they have the soul of one of the Order's higher ranking knights inside them, who got turned into a demon via the Ascension ceremony. So the Altos are pretty much the same, except they possess the combat and leadership abilities of an actual knight who was once a human. These creations of Agnus were meant to serve him and Sanctus, the evil leader of the Order of the Sword, who attains a similar god complex as Mundus. But it seems like in the meantime, Machiavelli, the demon blacksmith, was unaware of the discoveries and progress of the human scientist. After he created the Nelo Angelo armor, he also got the task of creating an armor that doesn't require a vessel inside, functioning on souls alone. He also finally succeeded and created a prototype version of the mass-produced Scudo Angelos called the Proto-Angelos. But I should tell you that whether or not it was Machiavelli or someone else who created the DMC5 version of Angelos is debatable, as the only source of information we can find for this is in the art book, where the concept artist commentates under the Proto-Angelos, quote, "Could this be the work of the same demonic blacksmith who created Nelo Angelo? This is the prototype for Scudo, and I imagine it is an evolved version of the Nelo Angelo that doesn't require a vessel." End quote. Even though the artist himself questioning this, I find it a pretty convincing idea. I believe it makes most sense that the person who created the Nelo, Proto and Scudo Angelos is the same demon blacksmith who apparently died in the story, so even though the soldiers of the MCU5 look fresh and new, they could have been aimlessly wandering around in the demon world for a long time, before they found their new master, Urizen, who took over the demon throne, which was sitting empty after Mundus got sealed away and Ergosex defeated. So in conclusion, we got the original armor, Nelo Angelo, then later an evolved version was created that doesn't require a vessel and can work on a trapped soul alone, the Proto-Angelos. They look very similar to Nelo for this reason. Then finally, as the prototype was done, they became mass-produced in some sort of demon factory, creating the Scudo Angelos, who are although smaller, there is many of them. And similarly to the Alto Angelos commanding the Biancos in the MC4, in the 5th game, the Proto-Angelos became the leader of the shield-wielding foot soldiers, the Scudo Angelos. But it seems like Urizen was not shying away from also creating an armor that is very similar to the one he was once trapped inside, that got the name of Cavalier Angelo, using the body of Trish inside as a vessel, and using her powers of controlling electricity. Although unlike Vergil, Trish comes out of it pretty much unbothered by what just happened. Understandably so, Since she was only inside for a relatively short period of time of 1 month, Vergil, on the other hand, was trapped inside his Angelo armor for possibly over a decade, wasting away his life as a mind-controlled servant of Mundus. And it seems like the memory of it haunts him so much so that even his human side V having a traumatic flashback when he sees a proto-Angelo appearing in front of him.
What evil lurks, I must destroy.
I believe this quote, "What evil lurks, I must destroy," is a reference to 2 quotes from the first DMC game, one referencing the moment Dante finds a book that says, "Evil is a reflection of man, thus evil lurks inside the mirror," and it got put together with another quote from the library description of Nightmare when it says, "You must destroy the evil inhabiting the dimension," referring to Dante having to defeat the demons born from his trauma inside the dimension where Nightmare teleports him into in order to get out. The moment of V glancing yet again at an Angelo armor also got illustrated in the Visions of V manga in a very strong and emotional way, showing the protagonist much more terrified and full of fear and anger, almost shouting from how badly he wants to destroy them all and get finally free from his nightmare. The final bioweapon of this video is 2 different entities within one body, appearing in Devil May Cry 3 along with the release of the Tamanni crew. The gigantic, whale-looking demon, the Leviathan, and at its core, the heart. This creature is being described the following way in the game's library: a biological weapon of sorts created by the Devil King. It, like the tower, was sealed away by Sparda, but freed by someone as of late. Its body is a gateway to the hell of jealousy. So the most important thing we learn from this is that this creature is very similar to Nightmare. In a way, it was also created by Mundus and being a bioweapon. This can be seen visually on the armor of its heart, having almost the exact same colorful, pulsating lights on its white armor. This heart is being described the following way in the library: heart of the great beast Leviathan. The heart itself should be considered its own entity, one that will protect itself at all cost. The appearance and story of the Leviathan within the game is quite simple and short. After Mission 7, Dante is being defeated by Vergil, but awakening his rage and devil trigger. With Dante's awakened form, a new chapter begins, Mission 8. The new journey starts with Dante having fun testing out his new abilities, but as a result of his recklessness, he ends up being swallowed by the Leviathan. This mission is titled A Renewed Fear, and the mission objective is Burst Forth from the Great Demon's Womb. This is an interesting title, and although Dante doesn't end up coming out of its womb and instead escaping from the eye, this title also refers to not only the awakening of Dante, but his complete rebirth, as if he's bursting out from the Leviathan's womb. And keep in mind this connection between Dante and the Leviathan, because I'm going to mention it later. But for now, I would like to focus on this entity, the heart of the Leviathan, because it is also being symbolic to Vergil in many ways. These are the following keywords that describes the Leviathan that are also connected to Vergil: fear, jealousy, protecting itself, and ignis fatuus. Let's go through each of these. First, we have the theme of fear. We see this word on the Mission 8 title screen saying a renewed fear. This title makes sense immediately, as this mission plays inside the body of the Leviathan. It is a terrifying mission with the most horror-like atmosphere, as it turns pitch dark and claustrophobic inside. However, the word fear is yet again being repeated and emphasized at the end of the same mission in the cutscene that starts right after you defeat the heart of the Leviathan. The game cuts to Arkham and Vergil, opening the door further deep down the Temen Negru. Arkham starts talking about the tower, reminding Vergil of its origins. He says the following:
People once cried out in fear of this tower. Temen Negru. A foundation that brought out fear. Fear. Yes. Fear.
So the word fear being emphasized 3 times within this mission, and Arkham even turns to Vergil and the camera shows his face when he says it, as if the evil man is trying to say something meaningful with this to Vergil. I believe this dialogue is being illustrated yet again in the Devil May Cry 3 manga, showing what happened before the game takes place. There is a scene where Arkham leads Vergil to one of the first seals that unlocks the Temen Negru inside a demon catacomb guarded by a powerful entity. This guardian demon is trapped inside a statue, but it is able to communicate with Vergil through his mind, and it starts talking to him inside his head and showing him a flashback of his childhood trauma when he was attacked by Mundus's demons. The entity seemingly shows this to Vergil in order to remind him of the feeling of fear and asking him if he is sure about releasing this same type of fear once again into the world. This scene really reminds me of the cutscene from Mission 8 as Arkham yet again starts talking about the human desire for building this tower in order to reach the demon world above and indulge in sins, while the word fear is being strongly emphasized. Next, we have the theme of jealousy. The Leviathan originally is a primordial sea monster from Jewish mythology, often depicted as a colossal serpent or dragon. As a symbol of chaos, it is a representation of a powerful enemy and a figure of God's creative power. Later interpretations in Christian theology associate it with the deadly sin of envy, and envy is also an enemy that appears for the first time in the game inside the intestines of the Leviathan, whose body is a gateway to the hell of jealousy. And jealousy is also a concept that is easily related to both Arkham and Vergil, as they having a strong envy of Sparda and his powers, both wanting to get their hands on his sword, the Force Edge. Perhaps Vergil's envy is so strong, it revigorated the Leviathan that flies around the tower, perhaps even hunting for him and Arkham. Then, we also have the theme of protecting itself. The Leviathan's heart, as its own entity, is first being guarded by a wall that you need to unlock, and it's also being encased in an armor unique to the artificial bioweapons. It has further defense mechanisms with 2 appendages hanging from both sides, a worm-like mouth on the left with red crystals on it, while having a blue one on the right. And the only way to reveal the true core is to temporarily defeat one of these mouths. It also starts sending envies against Dante when he approaches as an extra defensive measure. And this theme of protecting oneself at all cost is also being a strong theme with Vergil, who not only tries to convince Dante to get stronger together to be able to protect himself, but he himself is also unconsciously being obsessed with getting strong enough to protect himself at all cost, a desire that probably stems from his trauma. And the shield that Vergil creates around him out of magic swords could be also symbolic to his desire to protect himself, which is an ability that he does not only in DMC 3, but were also doing as Nelo Angelo way back in the first DMC. And finally, we have the key item that you need to find inside the Leviathan, the Ignis Fatuus. Its library description says, souls of those who sent to hell for various sins. They are the Leviathan's energy source. This was a brilliant choice for a key item by the developers, because Ignis Fatuus is a Latin term that means foolish fire and refers to the natural phenomenon of a will-o'-the-wisp, an eerie, phosphorescent light seen over marshes and bogs, believed to be caused by the spontaneous combustion of gases from decomposing organic matter. Metaphorically, it can also mean any misleading or illusory idea that deludes people, a delusion or a false hope that misleads or deceives. Ignis fatuus is used to describe an idea, plan, or belief that seems enticing, but is ultimately pointless or false. And this is very fitting for the story of DMC3, as it can not only refer to the delusions of the humans who built the Tamanni Gru trying to chase the power of demons, but could also refer to the delusions of Vergil, trying to chase the illusory image of Sparda's power with foolish fire burning inside of him. So the Leviathan and its heart is not only symbolic to Dante, but also to Vergil as well. And this can potentially seen being reflected on the boss fight inside. When you fight against the heart, you can choose between destroying the defensive piece on the left, featuring red crystals, which absorbs green orbs, or in other words, vitality away from you, while the defensive piece on the right features blue colors, and it absorbs your devil trigger gauge. And yet again, we got the theme of red and blue being the colors of Dante and Vergil, and the sides of the left and right. Since there is also a segment in the game where you have to obtain the Onyx Moonshard key item by proceeding through a red door on the left, while also having to obtain a golden sun sculpture by proceeding through the blue door on the right, potentially being symbolic to Dante and Vergil. I explained this topic in further details in one of my previous videos titled The Silver Moon and Golden Sun. I recommend watching it if you haven't. I'll leave a link in the description below. So it seems like there is a lot of theme with red and Dante being on the left, while blue and Vergil being on the right. And I gotta credit my friend Nero the Sky here, who also makes brilliant videos on games and Devil May Cry, who pointed out another interesting thing about this when we discussed this topic. To quote him, there is some mechanical symbolism there depending on which heart the player chooses to fight. If you choose to fight the Vergil heart, you get to be in demon mode for the fight, since you prevent it from absorbing your devil trigger gauge. But if you choose the Dante heart, you're stuck in human mode all fight. End quote. This could also relate to the two twins, as Dante prefers to keep his humanity alive, while Vergil wants to embrace his demonic side and oppress his human side, as he considers it weak, which is what he is terrified of becoming. And with that, I would like to close this video about the bioweapons of Devil May Cry. It is a fascinating topic of brilliant enemy designs that are deeply rooted in fear and terror. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, as it presumably makes YouTube recommend it for more people. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I enjoy reading them and responding. And subscribe for more videos like this in the future. But if you can't wait and would like to watch more right now, then I recommend checking out my other videos on this channel. I will put a link of playlist of similar DMC lore videos into the description below. I also recommend checking out the channel of my friend Nero the Sky, who helped me with the video, providing me ideas and observations for this topic. And again, thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.